Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all for this beautiful bar mitzvah this morning. It's also wonderful that I get to celebrate Shabbat with all of you. As some of you might know, last week I wasn't here. I was in Chicago with my wife, visiting my old friend Rabbi Danny Lutz, and experiencing that they have out in Illinois right now. I've got to tell you about it. We don't have it here in Texas, but you might have heard of it. It's called autumn, and it was incredible. They have this thing. It actually gets cooler outside, and they wear these things called sweaters and jackets. Have you heard of those? I'm not even making this up. We were driving around, and the leaves changed colors, and I would highly recommend you check out this thing called fall if you ever get out of San Antonio. While we were in Chicago, I convinced my wife to do this thing that she did not want to do, and that was to drive out of Illinois and go into Wisconsin to a little random town called Racine. And the reason I wanted to drive out there was because in this little town lies the headquarters for the SC Johnson Company, which, if you don't know, this is the company that makes a lot of everyday products that we all use, like Glade and Windex and scrubbing bubbles and Raid the bug spray and Ziploc bags. Now, at this point, you're probably asking yourself the same question my wife asked. Why would anyone want to visit the SC Johnson headquarters in Racine, Wisconsin? Well, I am a little bit of an architecture nerd, and SC Johnson's original office building was designed in 1936 by none other than the world-renowned architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright is, of course, the genius behind the world-famous building like the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. He designed many, many incredible other buildings and homes, the infamous Falling Water House in New York, in addition to other numerous buildings and houses. And I have always been intrigued by this story. The story goes that in the mid-1930s, the family-owned company, SC Johnson, it used to be called SC Johnson Wax, was in Racine, Wisconsin, and they were expanding and they needed a new administration building. The company's young leader, affectionately known as Hib Johnson, he recognized that their headquarters shouldn't just reflect their operational needs. It shouldn't be just another building, but it should be a vision of innovation and identity for the fledgling company. So he approached Frank Lloyd Wright to build it, and Wright treated this project not just as a standard office building, but as a place of work elevated to architecture. I highly recommend you check out this space online after Shabbat. It's a bizarre Willy Wonka-esque factory that is way more than SC Johnson headquarters needed to be. For example, he designed the main workspace, what he called the Great Workroom, with dozens of slender tree-like columns that look more like enormous lily pads. He wanted to give employees a sense of openness and organicness to the structure. And so instead of windows, Wright incorporated over 43 miles of Pyrex glass tubing as skylights to filter in light and reduce glare. And the result of this project was a modern but perhaps impractical work of art that is still regarded as way ahead of its time, and people still flock to see it. When it opened, by the way, 40,000 people went to tour this building. It was the talk of the town. I mean, it was in Racine. I don't imagine there was much else to do. But that's not the part of the building I want to discuss this morning. You see, after Wright's successful design of the administration building, the leadership at SC Johnson said they wanted a new research facility. So Hib Johnson asked Wright to design something vertical to complement the horizontal emphasis of their administration building. And he wrote Frank Lloyd Wright a letter specifically telling him, Frank, to be frank, don't go overboard. The design should be simple and cheap to build. So, Frank Lloyd Wright immediately ignored him and designed one of the most elegant and awkward and interesting and expensive towers ever to be built in human history. When I first arrived at this building, I looked at it and was immediately mesmerized. It's such a strange and beautiful protruding structure. And if you talk to the older scientists who used to work in the building, they said when they were in it, the building would sway left to right in the wind. Its footprint is only 40 feet in square, but its design features alternating square floors and a circular mezzanine levels which wrap all around them. He designed these mezzanines to be open because he wanted to encourage communication among the scientists there. And Wright envisioned the building to work with the idea makers on the top, the engineers beneath them, followed by the processors and doers. He wanted progress to trickle down from the top all the way to the bottom. Like the main building, there are no windows in this very strange tower, but rather 7,000 glass tubes to form facades on the side. There's only one staircase in the middle and one elevator, and I noticed that all the restrooms in the tower were only for men. Keep in mind, this building was conceived of in 1939. However, by 1982, the tower faced regulatory issues. Modern fire safety codes require there at least be 2 staircases, and the light from the Pyrex tubes was apparently so bright and so hot that the S.C. Johnson Company had to provide sunglasses to their workers and scientists in the towers so they weren't blinded by the lights. The tower was closed down in 1982. Research and development was moved to another part of the campus, leaving this tower as an interesting reminder that art and science do not always mix. Now, as I stood gazing up at this strange, beautiful, and slightly awkward tower, my wife saw me and said, "You better not be getting an idea for a sermon." But I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but think of another tower that appears in our Parshat this week, the Tower of Babel. Now, you might remember this story. It takes place just after Noah and the flood, when all humanity still spoke one language. We're told that the people settled together on a wide plain, and they said to one another, quote, "Let us build a city with a tower and its top that reaches the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Now, at first, this story sounds inspiring. A unified people working together, building something extraordinary. But we're told God looked upon their creation and saw that their unity had turned inward. Torah tells us they were not building the tower to honor Hashem or to serve one another, but rather they were building it to glorify themselves or to make a name for their own power and permanence. So we read that God confused their speech and scattered them across the earth, not as a punishment, but as a lesson to remind humanity that greatness without humility leads to disconnection, that pride without purpose eventually collapses under its own weight. Now, when I think about the Tower of Babel and this S.C. Johnson Tower, I see 2 very different stories of human ambition. The builders of Babel wanted to rise above the others, while the builders in Racine wanted to lift others up. The people of Babel built out of pride, but the scientists and designers in Racine built out of service, trying to create products that would make our lives cleaner, safer, and a little more pleasant. And yet I think both towers teach us something important. Both are symbols of what happens when human creativity meets divine possibility. Both remind that our towers, whether physical, intellectual, or spiritual, are only as strong as the purpose behind them. The tower in Racine may have closed its doors decades ago, but its impact lives on. I find out that the products that were developed in this very strange and staggering tower include some of the most recognized products the world has ever seen, like Raid, Off, Glade, Pledge, and yes, even Ziploc bags. I bet every one of us in this room have used one of those products. Came out of a very weird tower. The people who worked there, they didn't just make bug spray or air fresheners. They made ideas and they spread them around the world. And their work continues long after the lights went out in that glass and brick structure. Friends, perhaps that's the deeper message of this week's Torah portion and of this bar mitzvah morning. We all build towers in our lives, perhaps not out of brick and glass, but out of our choices, our actions, our values. But I hope when we build these metaphorical towers that the question is never, how tall can I build them? But rather, why am I building them in the first place? Am I building to make a name for myself or to make a difference for someone else? Am I constructing a monument to my ego, or is it a foundation for a blessing? Friends, when we build with humility and compassion and a sense of sacred purpose, when we build to serve, then even if the tower itself one day closes, the light it gave off will still shine brightly in the world. So may each of us, like the builders in Racine and unlike the builders of Babel, use our gifts and creativity to serve something higher than ourselves. May our towers, the ones of heart, home, and community, stand not as symbols of pride, but as beacons, as purpose. And may we remember that God does not dwell in the tallest of towers, but in the smallest acts of kindness, in the spaces we build between one another. So as we leave here today, may we all be inspired to build towers of kindness, towers of learning, and towers of community. And if we ever start to get too proud of ourselves, if we ever start thinking we're just too impressive, may we remember the Tower of Babel and the Tower of Racine, and may we remember the fact that Frank Lloyd Wright built an entire research tower with no women's bathrooms. Because if that's not a reminder of human imperfection, I don't know what it is. Shabbat shalom.